Heather from the Helpful Counselor, and I'm coming to you with lesson number 3 of my 5-part free mini course on relational aggression. And today's topic is going to be about the impact of relational aggression. Like, well, why is it such a big deal? You know, some people think that it's just a friendship problem, and we talked about the difference between friendship problem and relational aggression. And it's not just a friendship problem. It is, they are being targeted, they are being systematically reduced in the eyes of their peers on purpose. And this is a time in their life where their sense of self and identity is formed by their connections with their peer group. Remembering back to your developmental courses in psychology, preteens and teens start to move away from the home base and start to identify more and more with their peers, which is why relational aggression is so huge for them and is so emotionally draining and just life altering for some. And we'll get into some more details on what it can do, because they have identified this is who they are. And when their social connections are hurt or cut off, or they feel isolated, and that's ultimately what happens, is that they're excluded from the peer group. They start to feel isolated. They start to internalize the relational aggression and feel that it is their fault, that they have done something to deserve this, because relational aggression is so covert that it's really hard to put a finger on, well, you know, Tamara is, being mean, and she's mean to a lot of people. But with relational aggression, Tamara probably really acts real happy and bubbly and nice to everyone else, but the relational aggression is on the down low. So then that makes the target feel that it's on them, and that's not the right place to put it. But in their mind, they're so emotionally overwhelmed that they have entered the fight or flight response. So they are operating at a base stem functioning of just kind of survival mode. They're just trying to make it through the day without any sort of attention being called on them, or certainly not to make the situation worse. So they're operating on this base level survival mode. Going into class, how well do you think that they're going to be able to retain that information in class? How well do you think that they're going to be able to focus, right? So relational aggression, while it seems like it's a lunchroom or a bus thing or something that needs to be dealt with outside of class time, it needs to be dealt with so students can maximize their class time. Because when we are operating on a survival mode, we are not able to use our higher order processes, and we're not able to categorize information and think critically and be able to differentiate and critique and all of that great stuff that helps us to learn concepts and retain information. And that's just when we're talking about one student. A lot of times with relational aggression, it involves far more than just one student in the classroom. So now you have a handful of students in a classroom that's now distracted by sort of this, the happenings of what's going on, of the latest, passing notes or texting now, and talking about stuff that is not the actual lesson, because they're wanting to know what happened or what was said, get the last juicy tidbits. So it can be very, very disruptive to the learning environment, not just for the target, not just for the other people that are involved, but for the whole class in general. Because if they're talking about, latest gossip, then that's going to distract other people and disrupt the learning environment. And if those people are put into different groups to try to, work on projects and that sort of thing, they're not going to be fully present to be able to do their side of the work. And then it's just going to take over, and it's really going to affect the classroom. And that's just really sort of on like a level 1 sort of thing. Once we start really getting into it, this emotional distress can actually cause us physiological changes with anxiety. It can cause stomach upset, it can cause headaches, it can cause muscle pain, it can cause a lot of different issues that will actually lead to absenteeism, where if a student does not feel valued as a person, does not feel like they belong in the classroom, they do not feel wanted by their peers, they will find pretty much any excuse to stay home. And if the parent is not, or caregiver is not savvy on what's going on, they can end up missing a lot of school, a lot of instruction, and fall behind academically, which is going to just sort of snowball their feelings of being unworthy. And it's just going to sort of support their negative concept. So it's really important that we address this and give students the skills they need, and so that they understand what relational aggression is, and that they understand that they are not at fault for it, that they do not deserve it, that it's really the aggressor that has the problem and has the issue. Because if we are not clear with our message that we provide a safe and secure environment for all students, right, then they internalize this feeling of isolation. And research has shown that when students feel isolated and excluded from their peers, that prevalences of mental health continue on through adulthood, life satisfaction, unemployment is even higher, divorce rates are even higher. It affects their future relationships. So it's this domino effect that if we are not able to address it, they internalize that, and then that then becomes a part of their story. And we don't want that to happen. And in the news, we have seen countless heartbreaking details of preteens, teenagers, even elementary students that have committed suicide because they have been bullied, they have been made to feel like they are not wanted, that they don't belong by their peers. So relational aggression is not just friendship drama. It's not something to just, they need to get over it. It is a very serious thing that has very serious implications, and it can really ultimately culminate into life or death. And especially when we're thinking about when they start to, if they internalize these feelings and then they develop maladaptive behaviors such as early sexual promiscuity, possible teen pregnancy, they could self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, and then all of that, it just has this effect for the rest of their life. So it is vital that we take this serious and that we have a specific process in place that we follow that documents the situation, it documents what we've covered, the plan. It gets kids thinking of how to solve the problem and what steps they have control over. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and download the worksheet that I've provided in this lesson, and I want you to sort of sketch out like a flow of your plan. So when you have someone that comes to you, how do you go about helping them, and develop a system that allows you to educate your students and to help them work out a situation where they are going to have some alternatives to their behavior, so that way you can end the cycle of relational aggression and try to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. So, with that, I do want to say that if peer mediation, or conflict resolution, I want you to take note of how that works and where that falls at in your process, because our next lesson is actually going to take a look at some of the pitfalls that can trip us up when we use mediation and conflict resolution as an intervention to relational aggression. So that sums it up for this lesson. We took a look at some of the devastating effects that, if left unchecked, how our students can internalize being targeted, how it affects their academics, how it impacts the academics and can disrupt the entire classroom, how it's vital that we address it as soon as possible so students feel safe and secure in the learning environment, and so they do not internalize their feelings and then resort to maladaptive behaviors throughout their life. So that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in lesson 4 when we take a look at some of the pitfalls with conflict resolution. I'll see you there.